New York City saw a large gathering, as Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson would probably characterize, of youth doing all kinds of damage after a giveaway was announced. And the individual that announced that giveaway was a YouTuber, a streamer, and now that individual faces disorderly conduct charges. 21-year-old Kai Sinat. He's a live streamer on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram. Promoted a giveaway, was giving away like video game consoles and gift cards and a whole host of other things. But then you had a bunch of people get in New York, and ultimately they caused all kinds of damage, got into altercations with police, causing some police officers to be hit with bottles, rocks, and other items being thrown at them. Some officers were injured, and all of this happening late Friday. 65 people arrested, at least 30 of whom were juveniles. So you see this not just in New York. We saw, similar activities last weekend out of Chicago, where you had a whole bunch of teenagers being arrested, around 40 or so being arrested. And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson last week, reacting to reporters' questions, downplaying the crimes that were happening in Chicago. Here is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson last week.
But we have to be very careful when we use language to describe certain behavior. There's history in this city. To refer to children as like baby Al Capones is not appropriate. Now, as far as preventative, so let me just say it like this, bear with me for a second. So you all know I've been a public school teacher. And so sometimes you have a number of students who want to find spaces where they can cut up. You have to Google that. It's like black terminology for doing things, potentially harmful to someone or someone else or themselves. And when we would build systems to prevent that from happening, and this is what I've expressed to our interim superintendent.
So coming back, we'll hear from the Chicago Police Superintendent, John Catanzara. He posted a video on Friday with some reaction to that. But I also want to get your phone calls at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. We'll get to that next here with Springfield's Morning News. Let's get your phone calls or emails or your social media messages. You can email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, where we're streaming live. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. But the best way to do it is to call in live and local at 217-629-7970. And we're getting your thoughts on Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's comments from last week about not calling large gatherings conducting themselves in criminal ways as mobs or baby Al Capones, and saying that we need to approach this in the right fashion, he says. So let's go ahead and hear again what Brandon Johnson had to say and get your phone calls at 217-629-7970. Here it is from last week, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's comments.
But we have to be very careful when we use language to describe certain behavior. There's history in this city. To refer to children as like baby Al Capones is not appropriate. Now, as far as preventative, so let me just say it like this, bear with me for a second. So you all know I've been a public school teacher. And so sometimes you have a number of students who want to find spaces where they can cut up. You have to Google that. It's like black terminology for doing things, potentially harmful to someone or someone else or themselves. And when we would build systems to prevent that from happening, and this is what I've expressed to our interim superintendent.
So again, the Chicago mayor there talking about cutting up, and what we saw in New York on Friday, is that considered cutting up? We'll hear what the Chicago Police Union President John Catanzara had to say on Friday. But of course, love to get your phone calls at 217-629-7970. Got one that made it through. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning. It's It's just not bad enough yet. You had the Daily Klan that ran Chicago for 40 years. Then you had the chief of staff of Obama came in. So it's been Democrat control. It's just not bad enough yet. Not enough crime, not enough murder rate. It reminds me of New York City in the late 80s, early 90s. Mayor Giuliani lost barely in his first election. And there was 4 years of more crime. And then he won again. And then they were able to finally make the reforms needed to secure and make their city safe. So it's just not bad enough yet. And all their policies are coming back to blow up in their face right now.
Do you think that a Republican could ever win the city of Chicago?
Well, it's a mentality thing. Eventually, you have to look in the mirror and say, we've been voting for X policies for 40, 50 years, and these are the results. Well, let's give the other chance aside here to fix the problems. I think they have a chance, but it has to get a little bit worse. Like I said, it's just not bad enough yet.
All right. Appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number for you to chime in here with Springfield's Morning News. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning.
Hey.
I think I got it figured out finally after listening to your show.
All right.
You see, if you're Brandon Johnson at a press conference surrounded by police, it's kids cutting up. If you own a convenience store and there's 100 people coming at you with knives and guns, it's a mob. It's just, how you look at it down the barrel. And, I mean, this is I'm trying to visualize it. I was born and raised in Chicago, lived there most of my life. I'm trying to visualize how my parents would have reacted had I told them, hey, I just robbed a convenience store, but it was just kids cutting up. I mean, it's just out of control. I mean, you can't only put.
I wonder how many kids now are going to take the cue from Mayor Johnson to say, "No, Mom, I stole that car and went on a joyride, but I was just cutting up."
Yeah, I mean, it's just okay. So I understand with these, super libs and woke and all that. It's all a matter of you got to change all the definitions first, so it doesn't look quite as stupid as it sounds. But I mean, it's just awful. I mean, here I love Chicago, and it's getting to the point where I think twice before I have to go up there now.
Yeah.
And it's just, nobody's looking out for the future. They're all just trying to score political points, and I just think it's disgusting.
I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. What does the Chicago Police Union president have to say about Mayor Johnson's comments? John Catanzara on his YouTube channel sharing his thoughts about Mayor Brandon Johnson not wanting to call a large gathering conducting themselves in a criminal fashion as a mob. And also the mayor talking about cutting up. Here is John Catanzara.
The teen takeover on Roosevelt Road was not teen takeover. It was looting. It was mob action. It is in the ordinance, Mr. Mayor. Look it up. It's also in city statute, or a state statute, I should say. I would hope you'd be familiar with that. Nobody is renaming anybody little mini Al Capones, but they certainly, in many cases, have the same terrorizing effect that Al Capone had 100 years ago with these teen takeovers, where they think they can do whatever they want with no repercussions, no parental supervision, and no accountability, specifically apparently by the mayor's office in City Hall, who wants to excuse all this bad behavior because Chicago has a past. So that means do whatever the hell you want, apparently. You're proving yourself to be exactly who we were afraid you were going to be. You are taking CTU's lead and making excuses for bad behavior like they have done for many years now in the school system, not giving quality education, indoctrinating kids, and making them victims where they think that they are entitled to behave any way they want because of past wrongs, either perceived or in reality. It is a terrible way to govern a city. You are slowly destroying it bit by bit by bit. This is a beautiful city that has so much opportunity, and even for those teens, but that does not give them the ability to act any way they want. And I don't care if they're white, black, or brown. There is an obligation. Parents should be held accountable and responsible, but until your rhetoric changes, This probably doesn't get any better. It only gets worse. So I'm calling on the aldermen. You run the city, not the mayor. The mayor steers the ship in theory, but you can have a drastic effect on what happens in this city. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution and let officers proactively engage in trying to stop this nonsense and not make excuses for those bad behavior. All the aldermen should be publicly calling out what happened. Ignore what the mayor says, because he is clearly in CTU's pocket and going to say whatever they want him to say to try and lessen the obligation and responsibility of these youths who are destroying pockets of this city little by little.
So again, that's the Chicago Police Union President John Catanzara on Friday, reacting to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's comments about youth cutting up. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Let's take another call here before the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Well, I think that people, I call it the pie. So I want to talk about the piece of the pie that nobody's talking about. I was born and raised, lived in Chicago most of my life. Who elected Mayor Johnson? Who elected him? All that groundwork is still there, and I'll tell you who it is, because I was involved with them. I was fooled for a while and then left. I even did an internship with them. It's called the Gamaliel Organization, and it's a Marxist socialist group, but they appeal to churches. And so I'd like people to look up the Gamaliel Foundation, see the things that are said about them. All the groups that they birthed in Chicago are part of what's going on right now. They elected Johnson, Mayor Brandon Johnson, and until that is looked at, you ask, can a Republican win? No, they have the groundwork, and I'm telling you, it's a great groundwork they did, and it's right here in Springfield, too, and I know I'm going to get beaten up for this, but it's a faith coalition for the common good, is also a part of the Gamaliel Foundation.
Well, I've never heard of that particular group, but I know that there's plenty of other, social and societal nonprofit groups that work in tandem with other nonprofit groups that get people out to vote or do the ballot collection and a variety of other things. So interesting. I'll have to take more look at that. Appreciate the calls. Some of the comments on YouTube. If Johnson continues to voice his opinions on criminals and crime, he will lose the rest of his police department, and how he has any now. Can't wait to see who picks. Let me get this just right. Can't wait to see who he picks to lead the department. Poor guy. That commenter says. If you cross the double yellow line while driving on the highway above the speed limits, you are potentially harming others and have committed a felony. Okay, I'm not sure where that comment came from. Mayor Sharman, this person says, is soft on crime. That's why he was elected. And the rest of the city is now asking how long Sharman is in office. Another commenter says at least Capone was as discreet as possible. Capone was good to his community, another commenter says. I don't know about that. I am amazed that a reporter from Springfield is showing what this is about. While up in Crook County, this commenter says the media dropped this like a hot potato. So, yeah, interesting to see some of these comments come in. Back when, another commenter says, the parents were held accountable. Somebody else saying, thanks, Mayor Johnson. Let's go out and cut it up. Where the pieces, let them fall where they may. So others commenting, you can always chime in either by email or by social media. An emailer highlighting the definition of what a mob is: a large crowd of people, essentially one that's disorderly and intent on causing trouble or violence. A mob of protesters. Crowd around someone is an unruly and excitable way in order to admire or attack them. So again, just different definitions of mob. But even as John Catanzara said, that there's a definition of mob in the state statutes, but also in Chicago City Ordinance. So fascinating to see some of this. Somebody else emailing, just the headline is January 6th. and they say just cutting up. So, yeah, interesting to see some of the reactions here. And, of course, love to hear your thoughts at 217-629-7970.